Good morning. My name is Dan Suttle. I am from a company called CyberLens, and I'm here this morning to talk to you about investing in information and cybersecurity. A short presentation around advice for organizations that want to really achieve the right level of protection for their business. A little bit about me to start off with. Like many people, my career started before the end of college, tinkering with computers in my bedroom as a kid. 30 years nearly of experience across IT, everything from IT support in my early days through infrastructure management with organizations such as RBS and ExxonMobil. Then went into my own business, so started a IT business in my early 20s, head of IT for Petronas, sales around IT and Rackspace, and throughout all of that has been a heavy focus and exposure to information and cybersecurity, and hence the incarnation of my latest entrepreneurial venture, which is CyberLens. So before we get going, just a little bit of information from LinkedIn about today's showcase. I read a book on giving presentations a while ago, and apparently audiences either listen to what you say or look at the slides. They don't do both at the same time. So rather than me explain these to you, I'll just give you 15 seconds to understand what's there. And the reason for putting these slides up in the first instance is around two things. So first and foremost, I've geared this presentation and the recommendations towards the end of it to companies with headcount in the areas that you see are dark blue. So obviously from 2 to 10 at the top end of that, and then 51 to 200, sort of halfway through that level. So anything from 5 to 100 employees is a headcount size. That's not to say that what's in the presentation isn't relevant to businesses of other sizes. So do stick around, even if you're outside of that bracket. Then on the industry side, the important thing to note there is that information and cybersecurity is industry wide, right? So, or rather, industry independent. It's irrelevant when it comes to information and cybersecurity. Any business that wants to achieve the appropriate level of protection for its information assets needs to invest in information and cybersecurity. So just next slide is around what is information and cybersecurity. A quick reminder or refresher. I'm sure everybody's pretty clued up as to what we're talking about here, but to spell it out, the information security is about protecting the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of information assets. What are information assets? It could be anything from files locked in a filing cabinet through to your domain, your website, your HR database, your sales database. Personally identifiable information is a key thing around, obviously, GDPR. It could really be anything that has value in terms of information to your business or to the business of your customers. And it's really information over which you have custody or you are in control. And that's the key point. It may not be your information, but it might be information that you are in control of, and that's the important part. The other important piece around this is information security and cybersecurity are two very different things. Well, I say very different things. They are, one is part of the other. So information security is a wider focus on what we just talked about: confidentiality, integrity, and availability of information assets. Cybersecurity is a subset of that, and it deals with the technical elements of information security. So everything you do to protect your digital assets, and that's what we're here to talk about today, is digitalization and digital transformation of our businesses. So a key distinguishment there between the two, I think, is an important thing to remember as we go on. So as we digitally transform our businesses, this has a significant effect in terms of the requirements around information and cybersecurity. The fact that we are doing so much work to improve the efficiency, agility, availability, functionality of our information systems as we digitally transform is having an effect not just on size and complexity of our technical estates and the footprint that we need to manage, but it's then leading on to a significant increase in the risk that we are exposed to as a business when it comes to information and cybersecurity. And it's not just that this is happening. Every business obviously needs to keep with the pace, make sure that they innovate and that competition doesn't innovate more quickly and thus make our businesses obsolete. It's incredibly important that we continue to do this. But it's not just the fact that we're doing it, it's the speed at which we are doing it. And this is something that I feel, we call it digital transformation now. It started at the end of the Second World War when computing really came to the fore, and it's been going on ever since. But the graph here is a sort of representative of what we see in information security in the industry as it stands. And the light blue line represents an organization's investment in digital transformation over time. The dark blue line represents the equivalent investment in information and cybersecurity. And we see very much, just to point out that the light blue line is never going to be straight. We don't have a uniform approach to investing in digital transformation or in the computing that we use to improve the efficiency and agility and availability of businesses, of our information. But the fact is that as we do develop our businesses going forward, we're seeing very much a trend in organizations where the investment in information and cybersecurity has lagged behind. We see a lot of businesses at this time in this space depicted by the blue arrow there, the light blue arrow I just put on screen. Businesses are doing a lot of work to try and catch up to get their information and cybersecurity to the right place so that they can then invest in tandem, if you like, and on the same trajectory as their investment in digital transformation. We do see some businesses that are still where that blue dot is that I just put on the slide. A number of businesses I've spoken to recently have not even started on their information and cybersecurity journey. And it's important that businesses do so in order to maintain the security of their assets and give themselves the right level of stability and the right foundations to take their business forward. And it's important to note that some of these businesses are not small businesses. We're talking about businesses turning over hundreds of thousands of pounds, millions of pounds, subsidiaries of much larger global businesses who have assets in high in the hundreds of thousands, if not in the millions. And that creates an attractive target for malicious actors and a big risk around information and cybersecurity. So then what does this mean in terms of costs to our businesses? It's a key thing that, or it's no coincidence that information and cybersecurity, it has been typically underinvested in, and that's because it does cost money. And as we digitally transform our businesses, we have two options. We can take a proactive approach or a reactive approach to information and cybersecurity. The light blue line that you see there represents a proactive approach. There are no real metrics on the axes here, but you get the picture. It's a steady investment in information and cybersecurity that can taper off over time because you reach the point where you've done a lot of what needs to be done. However, there's a maintenance requirement as things go forward. And as you continually digitally transform your business, you need to keep a pace with that transformation. The dark blue line represents a reactive approach to information and cybersecurity. And what we see here is a very different shape represented by that line. And you get a flat line, sort of very little investment to start off with. Then what happens here is you get an event, and the event really catapults the cost of information and cybersecurity for the affected business, and ultimately results in businesses having to spend more over time rather than less. And so it's a bit of a false sense of security, or a false economy, to kick off the investment, or rather flatline the investment in cybersecurity until that event happens. Much better to take a proactive approach to information and cybersecurity as you build your business going forward. The value of information and cybersecurity is very much misunderstood within the customer base, and sometimes within the industry itself. And as we make the recommendations in this presentation, another piece of important information is to look at actually where the value of information and cybersecurity is. And to do that, we need to look at costs and potential costs of the information and cybersecurity governance and controls and strategy that we put in place. But not only that, it also includes the impact on a number of things. The first being reputational value. So your business has a value, your brand has a value. It's very important to maintain that brand. If you suffer an information or cybersecurity incident, that reputational value could well be impacted. If your customers find out, if you are in a position where your business is regularly in the mainstream press, then that could definitely cause a reputational issue. So there's a significant potential impact on reputational value of a business. The second is the value of your intellectual property. So if you're a business that is a creative business, whatever that intellectual property may be, design, patents, or technology that has not yet been patented would be a better example. Whatever that IP is, if that's stolen, it immediately reduces in value. And there have been some really high profile examples of this over time. If you think about the Land Rover Evoque, I think there's a company in another nation who manufacture a very, very similar car. And they've been able to do that through the theft of intellectual property, through cybersecurity issues, basically. The next is operational effectiveness. If you are experiencing a ransomware attack, if you are experiencing an attack on the availability of your information systems, then that costs you money. All the time that your staff can't do what your staff need to do is money out the door. And so there is a cost in that respect. And then lastly is the direct financial impact of incidents. And this could be anything from the cost for remediation, the fines imposed by a regulator. Perhaps it's personally identifiable information that's been stolen, and thus you need to report that to the ICO. The ICO has the right to fine organizations that are not demonstrating the right level of information and cybersecurity practices, and have an incident as a result where the theft of PII takes place. So, or rather, inappropriate disclosure of PII may not be theft; it may just be loss. So there's 4 key elements there to understanding how information and cybersecurity can affect our businesses. And this all builds to support the recommendations that I make at the end of this presentation. And another key element to cost is ultimately we need to understand cost in order to look at what's appropriate for our business. So the practice of information and cybersecurity is very much around risk management, and we need to be able to understand and try and forecast the risk that we are, or try and value the risk that we are taking as a business through looking at these 4 areas, to be able to say whether or not the protection that we want to put in place is value for money. And I think a lot of businesses out there receive information from companies they work with or professionals that they rely on within IT and information and cybersecurity that says we need to invest money in this technology, we need to do X, Y, Z. And what's not, or what's missing in that conversation is the why. We need to do X, Y, Z. We need to employ a new firewall or a new piece of endpoint protection that does this better but costs more. And that's not coming with a because at the end of the statement. And that's a very, very important thing to remember when we look at what we spend and how we approach information and cybersecurity as we transform our businesses digitally. So as a business, who do we buy cybersecurity from, other than companies such as CyberLens? So we have web hosting developers. Everybody has a website. We rely on teams of web hosting and development companies to produce that website for us in a secure manner, make sure it's securely hosted, make sure that there's security built into that website development and that website can't be hacked or made unavailable in any way. We rely on IT organizations. This could be a managed service provider or an internal organization. They're delivering the core compute network and storage. They're delivering things like endpoint protection, so antivirus and anti-malware, perimeter firewalls, email protection, so spam management or phishing management. Everybody needs protection on those levels, and you'll very much find that IT organizations, whether it's MSPs or internals, are very well versed in the delivery of some of this information and cybersecurity or cybersecurity controls rather. We also have security technology vendors, so we may buy directly from vendors that produce technology that we use to help protect our digital assets. And they also may provide services, so it might be required to install the product or integrate the product with your environment. And then on the right hand side, software developer, whether that's bespoke software, so custom developed software, or what we call COTS, commercial off the shelf software. We rely on these guys to deliver secure software. They may also host the software. So from a what we call SaaS, software as a service perspective, everybody's probably used Xero as a really good example for their accounting systems. And that is a SaaS solution. We log onto our website, we put in a username and password, potentially, hopefully, we put in a little code from our mobile phone to ensure that we are who we are. And it's very important that software is delivered securely and hosted securely. They also may provide, different software vendors may provide services, and they provide patches for software as well. So there's 4 key places that we buy information and cybersecurity from. And the one I'd like to talk about to support the recommendations that I make today for the businesses that are out there listening is the IT organization. It's the most prevalent among the companies that I think I'm talking to. Everybody's going to have, or most companies will have a structured approach to IT. There are some that I talked to recently who have not made that jump. So IT is very much a reactive approach to IT management as well as information security. So no IT organization, no processes in place. And that's actually part of the reason why I choose this as well. So a key thing around the IT organization and managed security service providers, which is what CyberLens is. A lot of companies out there think that information and cybersecurity is the responsibility and actually the IT organization is accountable for information and cybersecurity within a business. And it's really important to make the distinction that actually that's not the case. The other thing that's very important is the relationship between IT and security. And it's very key for businesses to understand this relationship and manage this relationship as things go forward. So 2 key points is that there needs to be a defined handoff between IT and security. So IT organization will go so far in delivering security services or cybersecurity services to your business, They will undoubtedly deliver a level of antivirus and anti-malware. They should be delivering firewalls. They should be delivering email protection. But then it might stop at that point. And it's critical to understand what that handoff is, and actually where a different business such as an MSSP can take over and really start to improve the maturity of your business when it comes to information and cybersecurity. The other key thing to note is the requirement for the MSSP, or if it's an internal security function, is to support that IT organization, but also hold them to account. So one of the first things you learn in information and cybersecurity is that actually you need an objective view, and it's very important for there be someone to look at what your IT organization is doing, but also not just the IT organization. Going back to the previous slide, look at what your other sources of information and cybersecurity are: the web developers, the software developers, and really take a governing role in that. And so the security function is responsible for everything from strategy. Governance is making sure that the things that need to happen to employ good information and cybersecurity are happening. The risk management that I talked about earlier, the weighing up of, okay, well, this could cost us X if this event happens. It's going to cost us Y to protect against it. Does that equation match up? And then things like architecture, so making sure that from a security perspective, systems are deployed in the right way and that the right controls are put in place. An MSSP will also look at things like testing, so we can test the functionality of a piece of software from a security perspective. We can test the ability to penetrate a system from the public internet. That's a very important part that isn't generally delivered by other organizations that deliver certain elements of security services. And then security operations is around monitoring what's going on and ensuring that we understand what the threats to our organizations are, taking information from all of the different places where we can get it. So AV systems, firewalls, other control areas to understand whether or not anybody's trying to attack our organization and what we can do about it. When it comes to incident response, how do we respond to an incident if a ransomware attack happens? How do we respond to an incident if we see someone trying to penetrate our firewalls? What do we do in that scenario? And that's a very important part that also won't generally be covered comprehensively from any of the other sources of purchasing cybersecurity or information on cybersecurity. So then to my CyberLens top tips, and the first one for the smaller businesses or the businesses out there that fit within that size bracket that I explained earlier. Get the IT governance and operations right. And I spoke to a company not so long ago, and I said, look, we can help you with that, your information and cybersecurity. Absolutely, that's something we can do. But the first thing I'm going to do when you pay me to do that is actually to recommend you go and spend a whole load of money with someone else. And that is the organization in question didn't have the IT structure, no IT organization in place, outsourced or internal. IT was not delivered properly within the organization. So the first piece of advice I would have for the businesses out there, everything from sort of 2-3 man bands up to whatever size, is get that IT organization set up properly, outsource to a good company, understand what that company will do for you from an information and cybersecurity perspective, so that you can start to manage the handoff between IT and the security function as you move forward. The second point is to understand accountability and responsibility. A really key observation within my role as director of CyberLens is I see a lot of businesses not understanding who's accountable and who's responsible for information and cybersecurity. The IT organization is not accountable for information and cybersecurity. The leaders of an organization are, and those leaders are also ultimately responsible for information and cybersecurity, but that responsibility is often delegated, or should be delegated, to a security function, so a purpose-built security function, again, whether that's internal or external and outsourced, and should be separate to the IT function to give that objectivity, remove that conflict of interest, and make sure that security is properly dealt with within the business. Some of this responsibility is delegated to IT, but it's always governed by the security function. So, we talked about endpoint protection, we talked about antivirus, anti-malware, we talked about firewalls. Those are things that are IT controls delivered by IT and managed by IT generally, but they need to be governed by a separate security function. There needs to be eyes on and an objective view of what's happening in your business. Which was the next point. So whether that's internal or outsourced, create that information security function. It might be that you choose to implement this through a part-time role, or make part of someone's role responsible for that information and cybersecurity governance. And if you do that, the key thing to do there is train them, give them the resources they need. Don't ask them to do a job without the requisite tools and experience. And then lastly, security is never done. As you continue digitally transform your business, you start to implement new systems, you change systems, you put automation in place, you develop Internet of Things, IoT devices, everything you do to drive your business forward from a technology standpoint and from a digitalization standpoint, we go back to that fact that is increasing size and complexity and ultimately risk, and you need to manage that risk in tandem. There is a requisite amount of work that you need to do in information and cybersecurity to ensure that you don't end up with an event that means that you end up costing your business more to remediate and to repair the damage done by an information and cybersecurity issue. And I think that comes to about 20 minutes. So I'm going to hand over now for any questions. I'll put my screen up. I understand there's nothing coming through on the chat. In which case I shall stop sharing and say thank you very much. If you've any questions, then please feel free. We've got a contact form within the booth, and I think there's a contact form in the chat at the top of this session. So please do get in touch if you have any questions, or if you think CyberLens can help with implementing good information and cybersecurity for your business. Thank you.